Hello, and welcome to the old Ford.
So here she is. This is my 1979 Ford F150 Custom. These were otherwise known as Dentsides. So I've had a little side fund I've been putting savings behind. It's called my truck fund. The idea is to save up for my Super Duty I want to get eventually. But this spring I was getting bored with some stuff around here, and Shannon knew I haven't had anything to tinker on. The Jeep projects are getting too expensive. And the house stuff I like doing, but it's not as fun as something like this. So I started looking on Facebook, looking through old cars, trying to think of something I could get that would be cheap to tinker with. Gave myself about a $1,500 budget and really wanted to keep under that so I'd have some money to get started on it a little bit. Came across this truck on Facebook for under $1,000. So went and checked it out. Has some definite issues. Some cab corners are rusted through, floorboards rusted, the whole bed's rusted. So quite a bit to do to it. The interior needs redone, but she's a cool old truck. So it'll give me something to work on, get her running. Main idea would be just to have something to run around town, go to the recycling center and back in. Instead of always hooking the utility trailer up, we're gonna use this more often. My timeline originally was to have it going by midsummer. Then of course the Jeep went down with all the issues it had, so I decided to put this off. Well, money decided to put this off. So now the Jeep's going good. The house is kind of in order, so it's time to get back to this. So I just ordered a bunch of parts for it. Those are starting to come in. I got some more parts I'm getting ready to order. So hopefully the fun stuff will start soon. But in the meantime, figure today I'll go over a little bit of it with you, show you the inside and out, go over the plans for it. Some of the cool things on it. I mean, it's less than 80,000 miles on the truck. There's a farmer down here, a rancher, that had it, and then he sold it to the guy I bought it off of, which that guy intended to rebuild it, but once again, life gets in the way, so he hadn't got around to it. Didn't want to see it completely rot in his yard, so he threw it on Facebook. But there's little things like in the door jamb on the driver's side, it still has the sticker from the factory showing all the build codes. So I was able to look up and see that it was manufactured in Virginia, has the C6 transmission. Can't remember what the gearing was, but I looked that up. It was way different than I would have thought, like 323s or something like that. I know nothing about Fords. Growing up in the Midwest, I was a GM guy, at least as far as what I was working on most of the time. I don't really have a whole lot of brand loyalty. But cool old truck. We'll see what we get into with it, and hopefully we can get her running here by Thanksgiving is my new goal. And we'll go from there and see what happens. As you can tell, it pretty much needs an entire new bed. There's rust through the floor and the front section up by the cab, and both the side rails are all dented up. I toyed around with the idea of putting a wood flatbed in it, but by the time I end up doing all the labor and all the cost for it, it'd probably be about the same that I can actually get all these panels and just redo it to stock. So in the long run, I think it'll be better stock anyway, so I'll go that route. For now, it's kind of became a catch-all. So on this side of the bed is everything that I've removed from it so far that is going to just get scrapped. On that side, I've got a few items that are things that I'll either put back on or I'll try to sell on eBay or something that they're at least decent stock components that could be resold. So when I'm all done, I'll drive it over to the recycling center and throw away what I'm not going to keep, and everything else will go on eBay, or I'll find someone else in the area that's got an old Ford that needs some parts. So the inside needs quite a bit of work, but I've done a few things so far. There was some small stuff like the gear selector. The orange lever that shows what gear you're in was completely broke off. So I replaced that and some bushings inside the steering column, and the original steering wheel was completely rotten out. So I got a Grant steering wheel put on it. The only issue I ran into with that is the original turn signal lever interfered with it because the original one dished out a little bit further. So I got that replaced with a shorter turn signal lever. And then the gear selector does the same thing up top. So your hand would actually hit the gear selector. So I've got to take that off, and I'm going to bend that a little bit to straighten it out and get it out of the way. Beyond that, I ripped all the heating and air controls out of it. Whatever factory radio was in there, someone tried to put a regular CD player in it. Aftermarket, of course. Not that they had CD players in '79. But When they did it, they cut the entire metal bracket that mounts the original radio, so I'm gonna have to get a new bracket or modify something. So I'm probably gonna go with modifying something, and since it's already cut up and not original, I'm gonna try to get a double DIN head unit in there. So we'll see how I can pull that off. You can't do it and keep the heating and air controls, but I plan on relocating those anyway when I get an aftermarket kit. Beyond that, it's gonna be probably just seat covers for short term. There is rust in the floor pan, so I'm gonna at least have to get the driver's side floor pan replaced and a new one welded in. And then it's just cleaning it up. The dash up here is cracked in a couple places, so that'll have to be replaced. The LMC truck has that stuff. And then of course the coolest feature for me on the inside is the old fake wood ceiling. To me it looks cool, so it needs new trim around it, but that will come eventually, and we'll see what else we get into. So this truck has the original 302 that it came with in it. Only 76,000 miles, like I said earlier. So far since I've had it, I haven't done a whole lot. I have replaced the alternator, the water pump, and the power steering pump. And then I've replaced all the battery cables and the solenoid. Other than that, all I've done is clean it up, remove a lot of stuff. And if you ever see the original heating box on these things, it takes this entire section up. It was back there in the bed of the truck too, if you noticed. The thing was massive, didn't work anyway, so I just went ahead and ripped it out of there. I'm gonna get a block off plate for this and get that sealed off and put an aftermarket heater in it. I haven't decided on the AC yet or not. I might put AC back on it. We'll see what ends up going on with that. Beyond that, I've started ordering parts for it. This motor from the factory was the lowest horsepower motor that Ford put in these trucks. Not for that year, ever. So the 79 302 was 139 horsepower from the factory, so just nothing. But from what I've read on the forums, you can add a heck of a lot to that just with the bolt-ons. They were trying to do the emission stuff and they hadn't figured it out yet. Almost like the current day diesels. So I've already ordered a new carburetor that's, I think, 500 CFM if I remember correctly. I looked at so many now, I'm starting to blank on what I even bought. But so I've got the new carburetor, it's here. I've got the kick down bracket for the transmission. I've got the linkage adapters to get all that set up. And then I've got a few other little odds and end bolt-on pieces in there. So what I'm waiting on now is to order an intake and the headers. I was gonna order the intake the other day, and they just updated the delivery times and said it would be January of 2022 before it got delivered. So now I'm researching a little bit to see if there's another one I want within my price range. So hopefully I get that ordered in the next week or two. And then hopefully a paycheck or so after that, I'll be ordering the headers. Once I get those two things, I'll be able to start tearing it apart and do video of it going together and hopefully successfully starting it up. So that will be the fun moment, getting the thing to actually spin. I have manually turned the engine over, so I do know that it turns over easily. I'll go ahead and do spark plugs, probably lube the cylinders while I'm at it when I've got those out just to make sure. And then we'll kick her up and see what she sounds like. So as far as tires and wheels, for now I'm gonna go with the factory wheels. When I bought it, it had these on the front and it had some 31s on the back. The 31s were on some other wheels, I'm not sure what they came off of. But the guy I bought it off of did have the two wheels that were from the factory to match. So what I've done so far is I took the other two wheels that came with it, I got the tires off of them, and then I cleaned the wheels up, sanded them down, and painted them. So these did match this originally, so I've got this much done. They're not perfect, but good enough for what it's gonna be for now. I'm gonna go get tires put on these two, swap them out to the front, do the same to these front, and then I'll move those back to the rear. I'd like to get some aftermarket wheels. These are 15s and a 5x5.5. Because of the offset for these year Fords, it's a real tricky spot to get it without it getting anything to rub. So finding that size wheel with that bolt pattern and the offset I need has been a little bit of a challenge. So I'm gonna have to probably get it where I'm driving it and actually take it into one of the tire shops and do some trial fits to make sure everything's gonna work right. But for now, I'm gonna get it running, get the thing to actually move to a flatter spot in the driveway so I can do all these wheels and tires. And then we'll go from there and see what we can get done to it. So once again, the short-term plan is to get this thing running by Thanksgiving. I think I can get that far, get the tires on it at that point, so we can have it driving by Christmas on the roads. Beyond that, I'm open to some input too on what you guys think I should do with it. Had some debate on the paint, whether to leave it as is, just primer over it. Yeah, down the road long term I might put a real good paint job, but that's going to be way down the road. Between now and then I got to do brakes. I've got to decide if I'm going to keep the ride height exactly to the factory. I probably wouldn't raise it. I mean, we've got the Jeep and the Tahoe. We've got 4x4s. This is only a 2-wheel drive truck, so it does need to be lifted. Might have a little bit of a lowering to it. Don't know. There's some cool looking ones out there, so I'll kind of decide long term with that. I'm not going to keep it completely factory. Like I said, I'm going to try to do a double din radio for it. I'm going to do an aftermarket heating and AC system for it. So it's not going to be like a full resto. It's going to be a resto mod type thing, but I don't know. I don't even know if I can call it that. I mean, it might just be my tinker truck. So at a certain point, I'm going to dump enough money into it that I'll have to decide if I'm going to really go for it or just have it be a runner truck. So if you want to see what direction I go with it, go ahead and like, subscribe, stick with us, and hopefully in the next few weeks or months, we'll have this thing running and on the road, and you can see what the exhaust sounds like, what direction I go with that. I've had a really loud vehicle for a while. The Jeep's got a good sound to it. The Tahoe's got a good sound. I'll decide if I want to make this really loud or just do Flowmaster and match up with the other vehicles. But yeah, once again, like, subscribe, stick with us, and we'll see you soon.
And I want to drive it. I want it to go vroom vroom.